Joining us today, we have one of our favorites here, Dannie De Novo. Now, Dannie, you are going to talk to us today specifically about sometimes people aren't kind enough to themselves, and you have some maybe like 5 ways that you tell yourself, you're an author, and you tell your readers, how we can maybe judge to see if we're being kind enough to ourselves.
Right. My daughter was in preschool before all of the school shut down, and she would come home all the time and have lessons about how to be kind to other people. But she wasn't really learning how to be kind to herself. And I don't know that that's a lesson we often learn unless our parents or someone else teaches it to us. So I have some ways that you can look at yourself and see with your behavior and with your words if you're being kind to yourself or not.
Yeah.
So the first way is, do you accept compliments from other people when they are offered to you?
That's tough.
Sometimes we deflect them, or we make a joke, or we use self-deprecating humor. But remember that your subconscious is always listening to what you're saying. So we need to be careful about that. There's only 2 things that you need to say when someone offers you a compliment, and that is, thank you.
Oh, you know what? I will have to tell our viewers right now, before we started recording this interview, you complimented my tie. And honestly, that put me in such a happy mood. Because this tie is very special to me. I've never really worn it before. It was my father, and he has passed away, so I sometimes bring him to work through, an article of clothing.
Well, I can understand that, and it's so great that you bring him with you. I could tell by your response that it was special to you, but you can see that a genuine compliment means so much, and so it should be honored with a very genuine thank you.
Absolutely. I feel like almost nowadays, even too now with COVID-19 being spread throughout the world, and hopefully it's coming to an end soon, it's even probably easier for people not to be kind to themselves, locked in their houses all day, being sequestered from the rest of the world, and you just have so much time to think.
You do, and that leads me to the second thing too, which is comparing yourself to others, because while we're at home, we're spending a lot of time on social media. And one of the dangers with that is we start comparing ourselves and our bodies and our success and our lives to those on Instagram and Facebook. And we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to anyone when it comes to the idea of competition. The only competition we should be having is, am I a better version of myself today than I was yesterday? And we should leave it at that.
And I know all of the helpful tools that you give your readers. Your last book, Get in a Good Mood and Stay There, was a bestseller. And you really do help people find that inner courage that is really there in everyone, but sometimes it's a little harder to people to recognize it even in their own self.
It is. And one of the things that I suffered from, which was a way that I was not being kind to myself, was a lot of negative self-talk. And you have to be really careful with this because it can be a little sneaky sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I'll be doing something and I'll screw up and, under my breath or to myself, I'll say something like, way to go, genius. Right? But that's really putting myself down, and it's not being very kind to myself. Just because I make a mistake or have a little accident doesn't mean that I'm less of a person. Mm. So we really have to monitor how we're talking to yourself. If it's not something that you would say to a stranger, you shouldn't be saying it to yourself.
Yeah. Now, one of our viewers, she's a fan of your books, and she knows that you have an acronym that she wanted me to ask you about, and it's how to be kind, right?
That's right, yes. So K stands for keep the compliments. Like I just said, when someone offers you a compliment, take it. And be sure to compliment yourself, too, when you're doing a good job. Or if you just happen to catch yourself in the mirror one day and you're looking especially pretty or handsome or just feel like you have a lot of energy behind you, acknowledge that and compliment yourself, too.
Yeah. And then there's I.
Yes, I is for initiate the self-love. And when I say self-love, people think that means being selfish. Or they think it's, pedicures and bubble baths. And sometimes it might be that. But it's really about learning about yourself and learning to be patient with yourself and accepting of yourself. because that makes you love yourself. And when you love yourself, that transfers over into relationships with other people. It makes us more empathetic and it makes us more compassionate. And that's something that the world can always use more of.
Absolutely. And I think we kind of touched upon N already, the never compare.
Right. Never compare yourself to others. Just compete with yourself from day to day. And like I said, just leave it there.
And what is D?
D is defend against the negative, and that's defending yourself against that negative talk, right? Again, our subconscious is always listening, so be careful how you talk to yourself. Just try to pay attention and make sure you're not making snide comments to yourself or using that self-deprecating humor, because the point of being kind to yourself is to build yourself up. You should be your best supporter.
Absolutely. Danny, you always put a smile on PA Live's faces when you're on this show. How can people find more information about you and your books?
You can find me online at DannieDeNovo.com, and you can find my books on Amazon.com.
Danny, thank you. I'm smiling. I was smiling before we started. Now I'm even smiling extra bigger. Thanks for joining us today on PA Live.